don't see your audience, it's fine. Good afternoon, everybody. Shall we give it 1 minute just to let the people who are leaving to leave and those who are coming in to come in? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Caroline Faraj. I am the Vice President of CNN and leading the Arabic services and based here in Dubai. And I'm so honored and thrilled to be part of this panel, something that I personally believe in it, and I've got also the chance to meet some of my panelists before, and I also heard some of them speaking, and I can tell you I was really convinced. So that's why I'm part of this panel this time. And I would like you also to hear firsthand from really a mix of expertise and experts who are really doers, and they've done a lot of work that can tell you and show you some examples of their work. So I'm going to start with Peter Gould, founder and CEO of Gould Studio. He just arrived from Australia, so take it easy on him. And I would like to introduce you also to the rest of my panelists first, and then the procedure I'll share it with you. Khalid Khalifa is a senior advisor and representative to the GCC UNHCR. Welcome, sir. And Nana Furmans, she's a senior ambassador at GreenPeace. And last but not least, Omar Sheikh, he's the director and co-founder the Global Ethical Finance Initiative. So the procedure now is going to be, I'm going to give my panelists 3 to maximum 5 minutes to share their ideas related to the topic of our panel. Then we'll have a bit of chat, but the floor is also open for everybody. It's a chat, everybody, not only here, also with you. So if you have any question, any points to add, or agree or disagree, just raise your hand and I'll come to you with the microphone. So let's open the chat. And let's start rolling. So, please.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace be upon all of you. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, good afternoon. Really wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for hosting our panel, Caroline, and thank you all for making the time. So I think we live, and we all know this, in a very busy, noisy age. Even look at today. There is so much content to consume. There is so much demanding our attention. And when we look at the topic, and I think about Islamic social finance, I think a key word for me is, in that social part, it's people. Behind that finance, it's about people. So the kind of perspective I'm bringing and just kind of offering, I guess, in just a brief minute or so, is thinking about how we can engage people. What are some creative, innovative, and useful and effective ways that we're engaging people on this topic, especially ineffective in climate action and supporting displaced people and refugees. So a couple of examples that I guess want to highlight to help set up the topic is one good example of Islamic social finance in action is a platform called LaunchGood. I don't know if anyone's heard of LaunchGood here. So LaunchGood is a global grassroots faith-based crowdfunding platform. It has the largest number of, it's had 1 million donors from over 100 countries. And it's raised $500 million over the last 10 years from all pockets of the earth, all corners of the planet. It's incredible. And why I wanted to highlight this is it's a very neutral platform, but it's supported organizations like UNHCR, and where I'm from, Australia for UNHCR. And it's a great example of seeing this global grassroots effect of Islamic social finance in effect for lots of causes, including climate action. So it is possible, and there's many great examples and stories you'll find on a platform like launch good of this Islamic social finance. That includes sadaqah, which is your general charity, and zakat, which is the specific Islamically required charity annually. You see that in Ramadan, for example. And on the topic of Ramadan, for example, I wanted to also highlight the great work the GreenPeace has been leading with its, and of course, many great initiatives, but one of them being Ummah for Earth. And we have the great team that have helped lead that Ummah for Earth initiative. That's another really good example of activating the global grassroots communities to get behind these important causes, climate action, displaced people. And you see, for example, in Ramadan, how you have this beautiful global effect coming to life at that special time of the year. So I'll just leave it at highlighting those two. Launch Good, having 1 million donors in over 100 countries, and having GreenPeace with its Ummah for Earth platform. Two really good examples of faith-based action that you can really see some tangible results. So I might pass it on there for Khalid.
Okay, thank you very much. Khalid?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And I was thinking last night about this session, actually, and the link between faith, finance, social action, and climate. And I was saying, are we actually overstretching it? Are we trying to put too many topics under one banner, or are there really links that can bring the four together? And then I went back to the time when I was studying sustainable development, and I remembered a discussion whereby scholars were actually blaming religion somehow, blaming faith for the destruction that happened on earth, in the sense that most religions, or actually all religions, say something about creating the world for humans, and that humans should enjoy what God created for them. And that raised a very big discussion in history books about the intrinsic value of what we have in the world. Does nature have an intrinsic value on its own, or because it is useful for humans? So that discussion is big, and I encourage you to go into the textbooks and see how religion kind of played a role in how we interpreted humans' relationship to what we have in the world. Then I thought about Islam per se, and that is the topic of this discussion. Islam as a faith, what does it say actually about the relationship between the human being and the universe? And in the Quran, God speaks about earth, for example. He said that we flattened earth for all beings, not for humans. For all beings, humans and animals and anything that breathes, even trees and nature. Yeah. And not created it for them. We just made it livable for them. But we destroyed it somehow because of misinterpretations. And then the teachings, how to translate the text, whatever is in a religion, into rules of life. And that's the jurisprudence in Islam, for example. There is a very important rule in fiqh that says درء المفاسد مقدم على جلب المصالح. And I will translate that into English, that warding off harm takes priority over bringing benefit. And I think we screwed that up somehow in the world. It is bringing benefits to the economy and the exponential growth of development in non-sustainable ways that actually put benefits over harm. And then we created a lot of harm in the world. Now we are trying to correct it. And this is the angle that we are taking in this session, we have several examples where to use the teachings of religion again to serve humanity, the teachings of religion to implement philanthropy projects. And I will differentiate later on, I do not want to take so much time now, between Islamic finance and Islamic philanthropy and the kind of projects UNHCR has been implementing actually and leading the way. We are very proud that we opened the door for international organizations, for UN entities, for everybody in the humanitarian sector who is speaking with a loud voice now about the Islamic philanthropy. This is a big achievement, and I am very proud of the team that made it happen, and I hope that it will continue to grow in the future.
You know what? I'm going to give you another minute to just to verify briefly the difference between philanthropy, Islamic philanthropy and Islamic finance, please.
Okay. In a nutshell, Caroline, finance is a generic term. So Islamic finance is not mainly designed for philanthropy projects, for charity. In Islamic finance, we have so many tools that have been in place for the last 1400 years for day-to-day dealings. And Islamic finance has proven that it is an equity-based system. That's why it is growing even in the most difficult periods in economic slowdown. So the economic slowdown in 2008, Islamic finance was growing by 16% annually. During the time of COVID, 12%, 11 to 12% annual, when every other type of economy was declining. Because it is based on assets, because it's not based on speculation, and the list goes on. But there are tools that offer themselves in Islamic finance easily to charity, to solidarity, to philanthropy, like zakat, like awqaf, like sadaqat, like sadaqah jariyah, and many of those tools that can be tailored to help a social cause.
Thank you very much. We will definitely come back to this. Nana, please.
Oh, it is. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings all to you. So, good thing that you mentioned about, like the tools and also like the finance instrument in Islam. So what I'm going to share here is about waqaf, which is sometimes it's called Islamic endowment. So I'm going to share about like the project that I did in Indonesia. This is before I joined GreenPeace. So it started in around 2010. Some of my friends complaining because trying to do like some environmental work, but we don't have enough fundings. And then I just kind of like throw these ideas like, why don't we create a waqaf? I mean, without even having any knowledge what waqaf is about. So I guess like they took it seriously. So in 2011 and 2012, one of my former staff said, oh, we want to protect the forest in Aceh, which is the northern tip of Sumatra, where I used to work after the big tsunami and earthquake in end of 2004. So there is, if you know, like in Indonesia, we have the threat of forest conversion into oil palm plantations. And how do we stop that? There's a lot of course, like a lot of entities working on trying to stop that. But then we are trying to look at the mechanism of waqaf, which means holding, like hold, putting in hold, right? So, and then like whatever the benefits it's given to the one who's giving the waqaf itself. But then the items cannot be transferred, cannot be sold. So usually like throughout history, there's a lot of, the waqaf is part of the Islamic finance instrument. And we know it like in terms of land or mosques or other charity things. However, we never thought about it as for environment or as a climate solution. So we started this waqaf based forest in 2012 in Aceh, with just 1 hectare, very small. And we put the money together as part of our wakaf, and then we registered the land as the wakaf, and the function is a forest. Once it's registered as a wakaf, nobody can sell it, nobody can change it, nobody can do anything about it, but as the natural forest. And now, over the time, it's almost 5 hectares that we have. And then remember, this is a very grassroots, and we chip in our money, and like not like rich people put the money, but this is like the community, because we are thinking that for the future generation, and we want to keep the biodiversity, and that is one way for us to stop forest conversion. And good thing that in the beginning we thought this is just our effort, just small effort in the grassroots, but other parts of Indonesia heard about it, and they actually liked it, and now it's already rolled in different parts of Indonesia. There's a lot of wakaf forests being established. And also in 2020, the wakaf forest in Aceh was acknowledged as a historical site, because that's the first wakaf forest in Indonesia. So we hope that by sharing this, we also want to see the potential of wakaf to be used as climate solution, not only for forest or land, but also for probably like how can we transition into renewable energy. So I think I have it up to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Pleasure to be here. First of all, it's I must thank GreenPeace for the introduction to come along. We've been doing some great work with them earlier this year, but specifically the COP presidency for having a faith pavilion. I think that is a huge step forward. And the reason why I say that is I believe what's in this room is the answer to everything going on out there. I'm going to speak to you as a finance practitioner. The last part, the word finance. Finance, just in case you didn't realize, has no religion, right? Very simply. So how does this all come together, Caroline? I think I might have started a line of reasoning here, so shoot me down if this makes no sense. Where are we going? How did we get to this mess in the first place? How have we all ended up in COP, right? Why is the planet degraded and we have the biodiversity loss and the species loss we have? One of the reasons, I would like to say, is because the form of what? Capitalism that we have today. The way we consume. Everything we do in our purchasing behaviors are such that we have no regard to the negative externalities of our production, of our consumption, and so on. Finance, for those of you who are not too familiar with the finance world, finance ultimately deploys the energy in an economy in different sectors, according to what the policies are, according to what regulators say, and so on and so forth. So if we want to really reflect on the role of finance in capitalism, you have to go down to the basic principles of capitalism. We had this lovely debate last night of Adam Smith and Ibn Khaldun at COP28. What would Adam Smith say? And I come from Glasgow, where Adam Smith was a famous chair of moral philosophy at Glasgow University. And of course, Ibn Khaldun, the famous Arab sociologist. And we said, what would both of them have said today about what we're seeing? One of the fundamentals of economics, as we all know, the joke for all of us, is anyone who believes in constant consumption in a planet with finite resources is either mad or an economist, right? So when we go to all of the wisdom in all of our faith traditions, not just Islamic finance, or Islam, if I can say. And by the way, I'd like to contend that Islamic finance as a commercial activity has not successfully engaged in sustainability and the SDGs and all the other requirements. I was at the pavilion, Malaysian pavilion yesterday. They were talking about how great their sustainability frameworks are. And I asked one question to the panelists, can I get a net zero Islamic pension or a net zero Islamic deposit account? Silence, right? Not to say that they're doing bad work, they're doing great work, so I don't mean to don't misinterpret that.
But do we know why they were silent?
Because they're not there yet. It's a new industry, it's been developing, it's relatively young, and it's been developing off the principles which, by the way, one of the single biggest characteristics of Islamic finance, I would again like to contend, is not just Islamic. The ban on interest is Abrahamic. So for the Abrahamic folk in this room, and those who follow Greek philosophy, where the Greek philosophers also said it's the most obscure construct in the world, that something which is not biological can multiply over time without anything happening, right? So I conclude with this. Finance, capitalism, constant consumption, constant growth, this desire for growth, growth, growth. How do we check that? How do we think beyond growth? How do we go to the theology of sufficiency? And I believe the faith communities have in them the wisdom to address the single biggest cause for climate destruction that we're seeing today. Be it Gandhi, who said there's enough in the world for everyone's need, not everyone's greed, or the Greek philosophers who talk about well-being being achieved through controlling your appetite rather than what's marketed to all of us, consume, 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 and you'll feel better. So that's my opening remarks.
Thank you very much. I think you are really putting now, the pictures is now clear to us that if everything was perfect and we were really in a good position, I don't think we need to sit here and talk about these things. And I believe that also because this topic is not really still digested and absorbed and understood by people. Otherwise, you will see maybe 10 times sitting here as well. But I always say that it's the quality, not the quantity. So let's talk about the challenges. I'll start with you, Khalid, if you don't mind. I know that in your bio it says that you're leading the UNHCR's Islamic philanthropies activity globally. And that is a challenge, I think, that you're facing. But what are the tools that you're using? And if you can give us as well just 2 things that you feel that you've achieved so far, but I know that it's a long way to reach satisfaction.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of words about the challenges because they are very much related to the solutions and whether the solutions we are offering are actually at the same scale of the challenges, which is not, to give the answer. We are living in a world where 114 million people are forcibly displaced. This is more than 1% of humanity who are completely left out in many global discussions, including in events like COP. Yes, we brought a few refugees to speak, but the majority of people who are affected by the problems are usually not at the high table, are not part of the high-level discussions. They're represented rather than present. Yeah. So UNHCR is dealing with an exponential growth of displacement every year. I'm sure next year we'll be talking more than 120 million people. Problems continue forever. The Afghanistan issue, 44 years now. The Palestinian cause, more than almost 80 years now. And people are displaced for a very long time. Can we still look at them from a humanitarian perspective, or we need to find another modality for working with this kind of problem? UNHCR tried to experiment. So we started with zakat, and that is for many of you the most known Islamic philanthropy product of UNHCR. We started in 2017. We built the infrastructure to do our zakat program, obtained 17 fatwas, opened a non-interest-bearing account, convinced the organization to waive the administration fees completely. So we implement zakat 100%. Whatever we receive, we give, so that we avoid any suspicion, and because we are asked by the fatwas to do that. Until now, this program has picked up, and we assisted 7 million people from Islamic philanthropy sources, mainly zakat and sadaqat, in 26 countries. Though UNHCR is operating in 133 countries. But those 26 countries are the countries where we managed to achieve Sharia compliance so that we do not lose the credibility behind the tool. Then Zakat became a well-lubricated machinery. It's gaining the trust of donors, growing. We thought of other tools, and this brings me to Nana's point about Awqaf. Awqaf was the backbone of social action in the past, but it's not anymore for many reasons. We tried to experiment with Awqaf on a different level. So we created the first global waqf for refugees with the Islamic Development Bank, and this is the first waqf of its kind in the UN system, whereby the United Nations is also investing money. The Islamic Development Bank is investing money. We have now commitments in this initiative of $112 million. This money will be invested, and we will be using the revenue, which is the main concept of Awqaf, that you freeze the asset and you use the proceeds. After 10 years, donors can actually take their capital. And this is a very innovative way of doing business. It's as if we are getting a loan from the donor. We use the interest on that loan or the proceeds of the investment on that loan from an Islamic perspective, and then the donor can get their money back after 10 years. We are hoping that this will reach $500 million. If we reach that limit, we will be generating annually between $30 to $40 million that can go to refugee projects. The more Awqaf we have, the better. So we are encouraging other organizations to do the same, and we are hoping that we will have additional Awqaf. The last point, and I will leave it there, is Sukuk. And this is a very big tool that fits perfectly with the SDGs, that fits perfectly with the impact of climate change and so on. I am not a big advocate for using Zakat for the SDGs. I'm not a big advocate for using Zakat directly to deal with the impact of climate change. I think Sukuk is the right tool for that. I think we will be really overstretching Zakat and bending it backwards to make it fit for this type of global action. And I can speak about that later, but the size of Sukuk and its impact is the right fit that we want for this problem.
Thank you very much. Peter, these are things that the UN is trying to spread the word and reach out to more because they have a target, and also they have lots of challenges that they would like to achieve. The majority of the population in this part of the world and also other places are the young people. And the industry and many people are basically holding their mobile all the time, so it's digital. And you are focusing on creative digital work and critical thinking and creative thinking as well as strategic thinking. How can you use this? And do you have any success stories that you think that it can be also copied and implemented in other places?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're in an era where we're in a time where everything is designed for attention and distraction. So many of our best designers, our best product teams, the best, smartest creative talent, a lot of it in the world, is creating products, brands, experiences that are like pulling our attention all the time. So they asked the CEO of Netflix a few years ago, who's your biggest competition? And what was his answer? He said, sleep, right? This is the world that our young people are growing up in. I have a 15 and a 13-year-old, and we do our best to manage social media and that pull, but that's just the culture they're in. We look at addictive gaming. Now, I enjoy gaming. I appreciate it. It's part of the culture and how we interact and how we have fun. But so many of these great experiences that are so compelling and consuming are just designed really to pull our attention as much as possible all the time, and the money that goes with that, of course. So I've seen over the years, and I've been practicing design for about 20 years. I've been Muslim for about 20 years, and I've seen these two tracks of my journey. Now, in the professional design space, and I've been around, and I lived in Silicon Valley for a while, I've seen many of these incredible tech companies, how they use this technology in this way. But I've also been around great spiritual teachers and scholars and been in Muslim communities for 20 years in different parts of the planet. and I've appreciated the depth and timelessness of these teachings. So what I've tried to do and been around people, that how do we more directly align these two paths together so that the products we're designing, the things that we're making for people are, rather than just designed for distraction, how can we design for remembrance? How can we use the same tools, techniques, technologies, social, digital experiences, but in a more contemplative, meaningful way? The same way that traditionally design in the Islamic world was used for contemplation, for remembrance, for dhikr. If you go into a beautiful building like the Alhambra or the Blue Mosque, experientially, whatever your faith or your spiritual path, you feel something. There's something very deep and profound about those experiences. So the question becomes, can you use that same design approach or philosophy in the digital age? For example, I asked one of my teachers about, could you make a digital Alhambra? It's probably a question for another time, but what are some of the underlying principles that we can take from our faith, for example? Excuse me. So, for example, just the simple act of being very intentional in our design, looking at our niyyah. What are we really trying to do with the purpose of what we're building, being conscious of that? How sincere are we in that, our ikhlas? How we're bringing our perspective as an amana, that we're actually designing in service for people, not just to sell more things or addict more people. And these are simple things, but they're not often considered in the people that make these big decisions around these products. And can we optimize for barakah or blessings in our design? So I think what I've tried to do, and people that I've been around in the last sort of maybe 10 years, is thinking more directly around bringing a spiritual perspective or a faith-based perspective into the design process. And we have tools and processes and now programs that teach these more directly. And it's really encouraging to see the results in young people and young entrepreneurs, young aspiring creative professionals, where they don't necessarily just want to replicate this completely consumer and addictive-led approach. To Omar's point, a lot of the design around us is optimized for that. So there are actually quite a few great examples. I think the Ummah for Earth example from GreenPeace is a wonderful one. There's a couple of other great examples. One that I would like to share, that I think is a last piece before I pass on, is thinking more creatively how we can engage this emerging digital native generation. So there's a project I'm involved with called OK Bears, right? And OK Bears, right? And it came out of last year, digital collectibles, blockchain-based art, this kind of thing. Now, the reason I mention this is that when the devastating Turkish earthquake happened earlier this year, we reached out immediately to UNHCR. Of course, we have some great relationships with. And this community of global digital collectible communities was able to very quickly use their digital art to take a UNHCR endorsed accessory for their collectible and make a donation. And when the news cycle was quickly ending in this, this devastating earthquake, this community of blockchain-based collectors was able to spread this awareness and message to tens and tens of thousands of people and raised $25,000 in a day. And it's just maybe a small example, but I think it's important and a good example of how we can use this more what I call heart-centered design. Rather than just design for addiction and attention, how we can optimize for more positive ways, but keeping on top of what's innovative, where digital experiences are, where communities are, and keep using that for positive means.
That's very smart, and I think it's a cool way that fits with the taste of the young people to spread the word. I'm gonna come back to you, Nana, but I would like to go to Omar first. Just this, as we mentioned, you mentioned related to the different faiths, and you have your own observation about this, and your focus is Islamic finance. But is there an issue reaching out and having a common ground that would bring all faiths together to believe in the same goal, no matter what the name is?
Yeah, so look, at the Global Ethical Finance Initiative, we have an Islamic finance component. I sit on the board of the UK Islamic Finance Council. I was former head of Islamic finance for EY in London, but Jeffy's work is broad. We work with all the faith groups. One of the things that we did in Edinburgh, it's called the Edinburgh Finance Declaration, where we worked with the Archbishop Justin Welby, Emir Sanusi from Kanu, former Emir of Kanu and governor of the central bank there, and a number of bankers and financiers to come together to identify the shared values between the faith traditions towards finance. What was fascinating was this. Islamic finance, as for those who know, it's only around 40 years old, roughly 40, 50 years old. The early experiments, Myth Qamar in Egypt in the 70s. The person who set up Myth Qamar, when he was looking for a banking model, he turned to something called a savings bank. He found that was the closest to the Islamic principles. The actual savings bank model that was prevalent in the early 1900s and 1800s across Europe and South America and other parts of the world was established by a church minister, Church of Scotland minister, Reverend Henry Duncan in the early 1800s. So a Church of Scotland minister inspired the chassis for modern day Islamic finance, which we thought was absolutely fascinating. And as I said earlier, the ban on interest was from the time of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ. For the first 300 years, from the time of Jesus, no interest was allowed. Not 1%, not 2%, not 0.1%, nothing, zero. And after 300 years, the theologians used legal gymnastics to overcome scriptural restrictions, which many, by the way, also sometimes accuse modern-day Islamic finance as well of doing the same when we look at commodity murabaha transactions and tawarruk transactions. So I think it's imperative, it is absolutely critical that the faith traditions come together. The Abrahamic faiths clearly have a similarity. The Jewish tradition also has an aversion and ban on interest. They had the exemption that you could charge it to the non-Jew, which is where the origins of some of the banking and money lending work comes. But collectively, I think the faith traditions need to go back to their wisdom. Their wisdom on two things. Number one, the fundamental purpose of existence and how that reflects on the purpose of our economy. Yeah? So barakah, putting barakah into an Excel sheet, understanding these bigger picture questions, consumption, unchecked consumption, living within your means. When we grew up, it was very simple. You live within your means, you know? You save and spend. Not like today, where you borrow and spend, right? So I think all the faith traditions have got a lot to say there. They also equally have a relationship with the earth, with the planet. Be it as Khalifa fil Ard, the stewards, or be it as interlinked, our spirits. So the Jain faith has a lot more, a slightly different view. But we all have collectively a respect, a consciousness for the earth, for the planet, and our spirits and our interconnectedness with that spirituality. I think those two things are absolutely fundamental. And then let that influence the financial behavior and the consumption behaviors that we have. Because otherwise, we're just going to be using social finance, zakat, to solve problems. We're not understanding why those problems were created in the first place.
Well, thank you very much. That's really interesting. And I hope next time or next year we will have a panel that represents also other faiths so that we can at least agree on common grounds that we can start functioning accordingly. Now, Nana, I'm so amazed when I read your bio, how amazing woman like yourself is able to do things in a huge country like Indonesia, and it's an Islamic country, of course, that's the population. And also you were able to move mountains as well in the US, in the same fields. And you're a woman, Muslim, and you believe in also the sustainability and the climate and all of this. So what exactly your formula, if you like, of success that you used in order to be able to do something like this, and how you can encourage other women as well? And please, if anybody has any question, please start raising your hand if you have any.
Well, actually, what you mentioned was very famous during Trump, because I'm like all the checklist is on me. I'm a woman, I'm a Muslim, I'm an immigrant, I wear hijab, I'm a climate activist. The only thing I'm not a Mexican. I said, if I'm a Mexican, that's it, I'm complete. But I look like Mexican anyway, but that's the, like, yeah, that's the tough thing. But so my experience was, as I mentioned, I was working after the tsunami and earthquake in Aceh back then. And Aceh is a very Muslim, like a very devout Muslim communities. So I was working there actually to help out on the reconstruction and rehabilitation, which is like, my kind of work. Like I'm a urban designer, a city planner. So that's like my thing. But because a lot of like damage, so we have to work also with the community how to make sure everything is done in a sustainable way and conservation and so on and so forth. Back then with the World Wildlife Fund, and but I was facing a challenge because the community lost everything. They lost their families, they lost their homes and everything. And then here I am saying that, okay, let's plant mangroves. And people looked at me like, what? You want us to plant mangrove? We just lost the whole family and lost our homes. Are you crazy? So I was very frustrated, but then like a friend of mine came to me and said, why don't you engage from the Islamic tradition? And I was like, what? Islamic tradition and environment? How do I make the connection? And then so I went back to the Quran and Hadith, and I found so many. So one of the Hadith that I used, like, to plant mangrove, if the hour has come and you have seedling on your hand, you must plant it. So I shared that Hadith to the community. And completely the response so different. Like before they said, no, we're not going to plant. But completely they changed and they said that, oh, yeah, that's the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, peace be upon him, said, so we must follow. So immediately, like all this massive, like planting mangroves happening. And I was so amazed. I thought, wow, how come we never thought about like engaging Islamic tradition on, like protecting the planet, and then like, after that, like trying to solve this climate crisis. So part of this, the Walk of Forest also inspired by that hadith also. And then when I moved to the US, it's the same thing. Peter mentioned about our work with Ummah for Earth on greening Ramadan. So when I moved to the US, it was like a week before Ramadan. And then the Ramadan happened, and I saw like on the mosque, all these disposable items, so piling up of waste. So I was complaining to my husband every night after iftar when we got home. So maybe my husband got tired of it, and he said, why don't you talk to the imam? So he took me to the imam, and I was just complaining, like, and I said, this is not right because we're Muslim. This is the holy month. We're supposed to control ourselves. Why are we piling up all the waste? And he said, you're right. Why don't you talk to the community? So that's how I started. So the imam gave me the space to talk to the community. And then after that, he called up our other mosques and our other imams. Please invite Sister Nana to talk to your communities. That's how it was in San Diego back then. So that's how the Green Ramadan started in San Diego. And then after that, I get engaged with the Islamic Society of North America for the US and Canada in trying to expand this program to the whole nationally. And also, of course, with Ummah for Earth, we have like the global. And Green Ramadan is touching the everyday Muslim in trying to think about their consumption in the holy month. That's when we're supposed to stop and to reflect, not to just, spend and then in the iftar and we're like feasting, not fasting.
Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, exactly. And I think that was the beauty of the Ummah for Earth platform and project, which is worth checking out and I think sharing globally. And when that launched, we launched it with this climate truth or dare game. So it was like a little social game that anyone with any device could basically log in, take a dare. And it's simple things like, okay, how much water do you use when you make wudu, right? And then it's like a little cartoon of someone with a bathtub fill. Or maybe it's, some type of, how much waste you're using at a certain time. And that worked really well. So we had I think 30,000 plus people globally take that. We did that in different languages. And I think GreenPeace did a great job in leading that. But the point there was the content was relevant. It was funny. It was engaging. People cared. It wasn't just like a long khutbah and, 50,000 word essays. Very few of our young people read that, but they'll flick through if it's the right kind of content. So I think whatever organization we're in or whatever we're kind of working on, if we have people in our teams, or we're adjacent to, or we have partnerships with people that make that content, whether we like it or not, like that's the noisy, attention-grabbing world we're in, is, you know, how can we share and distribute these great ideas? And that gamified way was a good example. So I'm glad you shared that with your one. And Ramadan is that beautiful time to do that. Everyone is spiritually charged and engaged. So if you can combine those two things together, you often have this beautiful effect. I think we lost our moderator, did we?
No, your moderator is here.
Okay.
Don't worry, you're not going to lose me here.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
We have a question from the gentleman here. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Muniat Sawi from Morocco. I have two questions, one to Mr. Khalifa, and the second maybe also Mr. Sheikh can respond to. The first about the global waqf that you mentioned. You said that after 10 years you give back the money to the donor, but in my view, a waqf means it's for eternity. So maybe you can say something about that. And the second question is about the legal framework in the Arab countries when it comes to foundations and to waqf. In my view, it is very difficult in most of the countries to have really a waqf in the classical principle. So can you say something from your experience about the issue of philanthropy and waqf in the Arab countries today?
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting question. It is true that a waqf in the traditional sense should be perpetual, should be forever. Once it is established, it continues forever. But recent schools of fiqh allowed the waqf to be temporary. So now most Muslim organizations are actually doing temporary awqaf. This is a fatwa that we got from the Islamic Fiqh Academy, Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, which actually is considered the largest fiqh academy in the world because they follow 7 schools of thought, not only 4. So they follow the 4 Sunni main madhabs, al-Maliki, al-Shafi'i, al-Hanbali, Abu Hanifa. And they follow also 3 schools of thought from the Shia side, al-Ibadi, wal-Zahiri, wal-Zaydi. So their decisions are taken also unanimously. And they approved the temporary arrangement for awqaf. What makes it even more problematic is that it is a cash waqf. And originally, awqaf used to be based on assets. You build a school, you build a hospital, something tangible, an asset. And in Islam, money is not an asset. Money is not considered an asset. It is a means to an end, not an end in itself. But again, modern schools of thought allowed the awqaf to be based on cash. So it is a cash waqf. It's temporary for 10 years. After the 10 years, the donor gets the money at the fair market value. So if we lose the money, for example, the donor will also lose. But if we make investments, the donor does not get anything. It is a social investment. They get exactly their capital as it is at the fair market value on the time of return. The second point about the framework, it is very difficult. Not only to awqaf. The framework for charity work in general in the Arab world is very complicated. It's complicated regarding the collection of zakat, taking zakat outside certain countries, getting permits for fundraising. It is a challenge that you have to deal with case per case. But in our waqf situation, it is done with an international organization. So it's done with the Islamic Development Bank. It's not a waqf in a specific country. It is a waqf with an international financial institute that will invest this money not following the legal framework of a specific entity. But I agree with you, the legal framework is a big challenge that must be addressed every time we try to launch an initiative.
Was there another question that you wanted Amar to answer? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else has any question? I know it's a tough topic. Please.
Can I just comment on the waqf thing? Yeah?
Yeah.
So the waqf thing is very interesting. As a financier, what it means is your balance sheet is long-term now. One of the biggest problems we have in the world of finance is short-termism, where we're all trying to make money now. right? So it's part of this greed story I was telling you about. So the Waqf structure innately changes it to a long-term capital. Long-term capital is what you need for development, as any development economist will tell you. Well, another interesting fact, so in terms of legal jurisdiction, so we've looked at this in detail. The European laws of trusts actually are influenced and originate through Venetian scholars from the Arab world. So Britain's first ever Waqf is actually our oldest university, Merton College at Oxford University. And if you look at the original trust deed document, you know, in any contract in Islamic law, it normally starts, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The Merton College original trust document starts, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, most gracious, most merciful. You know? So there's a beautiful symbiotic relationship there, which I think is worth pointing out as well.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, they're telling me that we have 2 minutes left. Oh, 2 questions. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So we still have 2 questions, please.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm Raifa from UNHCR. This question is not actually addressing one of the panelists. Whoever would like to answer can answer. We've seen Islamic social finances in the past focusing much on emergencies, on specific topics like the orphans, the widowed. We have like specific maybe interests in Islamic social finance tools to address these changes. How do you think we can move forward, shifting, or not shifting, but kind of spreading that importance on other topics, especially climate? We know that a lot of entities or maybe audiences do not think of this topic as a topic of emergency. So how do you think we can actually give this topic more importance where we can actually shift more finances into these platforms? Thank you.
I think it's very, very important question, because most of the people, they think of these topics as like, are important, but maybe feed me first, or education, whatever. No, but this is really our life. Please.
No, absolutely. Look, I think that's a great question, and fundamentally, Islamic tradition is very interesting. So we have zakat, we have the concept of a trust, of a waqf, we have the concept of sadaqah, and we have the world of Islamic commercial finance, which is an equity-based, so on. Within zakat, and a lot of my friends in Scotland always find this amazing, in 1 month and 30 days, we give over £100 million in donations in the UK, just the British Muslim community, one of the most giving communities within all of Britain. That cannot be used to build a mosque. And often they think, oh my gosh, what's going on? But there are very specific categories, as we know in Quran, that zakat can be used. The poor, the needy, fi sabilillah, right? The debt person indebted, which is very, very interesting when you want to make blended finance instruments, right? So, actually, I believe we need the scholars to turn around and say, how did you become poor? How did you become needy, right? And in the cause of Allah, I think they're the categories, because these are very specific categories in zakat. So those who in the audience are not familiar with zakat, as I said, you can't use it to propagate your religion. You can't use it to build a mosque. And this is a mandatory tax of 2.5%, not of your income, of your wealth above a minimum amount. And by the way, most development economists will say if you give 2.5% of global GDP, you will solve all the world's problems, right? So we need the scholars, and I think this is important for the UNHCR to do this, the way you've done successfully in the past, to come out with a dedicated, focused campaign linking environmental damage to the creation of the poor and needy, linking biodiversity degradation to the cause of Allah, to those very specific categories. If you can do that, then put the marketing campaign around it. I think you're onto something massive. And by the way, the flip side of it, I believe it should be haram. Now, I'm not a scholar, so I can get away with saying this. I believe it should be haram that any money deployed through Islamic social finance is done in a way that damages the environment.
Thank you. I think
I just want to add that, because you know, like in the the Islamic jurisprudence is the objective is to establish justice, right? And then with this climate crisis, we know it's such an unjust word. That's why this climate justice word came about. So then, you know, I think like that's like, you know, trying to engage with the scholars. I think very important to have this component, like, you know, like this climate change, climate crisis, as part of, like our issue that we need to solve. And then we have the tools from the Islamic instruments.
I know that we have the last person, but I would like to give you 1 minute, please, Khalid, if you don't mind, to comment on this. Is it easy, what Amar was telling us, to spread the word and have unified position? You deal with the government and you deal with the grassroots. Is that easy to do it?
No.
I looked at because I looked at his face when you were saying that. He was smiling, but I know that it's like, oh my God, I hope that will happen. Is that right?
Very quick telegraphs in a way. First, I just want to say it's not easy, and we need to make sure of two things: that we are using the right thing for the right cause, since Islamic finance has a lot of tools. It's not only zakat. The focus has been mainly on zakat because somebody put out there that the size of zakat in the world is between $300 and $600 billion per year. However, how much money do we need for the SDGs, for example? And this answers one of the points that I spoke about in the beginning. I said zakat is not the right tool for the SDGs. Why? We need annually for the SDGs $4.5 trillion if we are to achieve the SDGs by 2030. How much of that is available? 1.4. How much is short? $3 trillion, $3.1 trillion per year. It is unfair to expect zakat to fill this gap. That's one thing. Second, we will be letting governments off the hook if we focus so much on a tool that can solve that. Third is that zakat is mainly designed from person to person, assistance from person to person. Yes, you can use it for different causes, but we shouldn't really take it outside its parameters. There are other tools that can serve that purpose better. Working with the top is very important as working with the grassroots, to answer your question, Caroline. And that's why I admire the work Nana is doing, that mosques and churches and places of worship need to make sure that we are turning preaching into practice. We always say that, but it doesn't happen.
Amen to that. Thank you very much. I know that there are some people who are raising hands. I'm really sorry, but they asked me to wrap it up. So thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you very much to the audience. And